Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this position. It is white to move and draw. Yes, it seems like it's really losing because these pawns are pushing like this. He has a bishop, could be giving some checks, and the king's really close. So what would you do here in this position? Pause the video and try to figure it out. Okay, welcome back. Now, if you thought about, attacking the bishop, for example, rook to f8, he can have this simple, bishop to d5 check. It doesn't matter if we block, he can just take it. Whenever we play king g1 and h2 is actually checkmate. Now you might say, okay, instead of rook to f8, I would play, let's say, rook d7, for example, attacking the bishop. But the bishop being attacked, he can just play, for example, in here, he can play bishop to h5. Bishop to h5, he's threatening this check, and once we move, it's also checkmate. So, for example, we play a check, he goes king to f2, and here there's a beautiful, trap for white to play rook to f7 check, but only if black takes the rook. It is a stalemate, as you can see. But black will not take the rook. He will give a check by the bishop, and we are forced actually to take with the rook. And then after king takes, we play king to g1. He plays g2. Then we have the only move, king to h2, king f2, king takes, and we promote, and we are completely losing this game. Okay, so it's not rook to f8, it's not rook to d7. Let's see, for example, what happens if we play rook to h8. Rook to h8, we're trying to win this pawn because once we get one of the pawns, we can draw this by sacrificing the rook for the other pawn. Okay, now let's see what happens if we play this check. Well, then we move the king. He cannot give us this check because we can sack the rook for the two pawns, and this is a draw, of course. But the problem with rook to h8 is that he can play king to f2. King to f2 is a really beautiful move. Threatening to give a check, and after we move the king, this will be a check, and we're not going to be winning this. So, for example, if we take this pawn, check here, and this is checkmate. We don't have anything else. Like we can play this rook to f8, but it doesn't matter. Check here, check, takes, and queen to g3, checkmate. So also rook to h8 does not work. There's only one move that actually works. For example, you might be thinking about rook to d3, sorry, rook to d6. The problem with rook to d6, I think it is the exact same thing because of bishop here. Black cannot play king to f2 because of this. Because we can play check. He moves the king, and then we win the bishop, and this is actually winning for us. Instead, he's going to play bishop to h5, trying to get the check here. We play a check, he moves there, another check, he can block, and we reach the exact same position. So the only move that works in this position, hopefully you managed to find it, it is rook to d4. Now you will see why rook to d4 is actually the best move. Now let's get this out of the position, which is out of the way. King to f2, trying to give this check. It does not work because we have a check and we win the bishop. And this is completely winning because the king is forced to move away from defense of the pawns. And this is winning. So after rook to d4, can he play his move? Bishop to h5, trying to get the check here. Is it possible for black? Well, in this position, there's only, again, one move that that draws the game. It is rook to h4, attacking the bishop and also attacking the pawn. And you might say, well, there's this check here on f3. Well, then we just move the king to g1, and as you can see, the king cannot get closer. He cannot give us this check because we will definitely sacrifice, and he doesn't have anything. You might say, well, he can push this pawn, we can take this one. If he pushes this one, we take both of the pawns, and it's a draw. If you play, for example, to defend the pawn, play, for example, bishop to g2. Bishop to g2, we have rook to g4, attacking this pawn on g3. He does not have any moves. For example, if he played king to f3, all we can do, I guess we can just sacrifice, right? We can just sacrifice the rook. Whenever he takes with the king, this is stalemate. And whenever he moves the king away, we just take this bishop, he takes back, and this is a draw. So, after rook to h4, he does not have the check because after we move the king and putting the bishop there, we can go after the pawn. Okay, but what if in this position he played king to f2? King to f2 is really nice. He's threatening, if we take the bishop, for example, there's a check, we move, check, we take, and this is checkmate. So we cannot actually take the bishop. Cannot take the bishop. Taking the pawn will lead to the exact same thing, because check, we move, and this is checkmate actually. So how can we stop this pawn from giving a check on g2? It doesn't look obvious, like we can stop it, right? Well, yes, it is possible, only if we, neglect that the bishop is actually here. For example, we play rook to g4. Yes, because if he push, we do not take. Because after takes, there's pawn takes, defended by the king. We move the king, and this is losing. Instead, after this check, we just move the king to h2. If he takes our rook, he is defending this pawn, and we cannot actually move. This is stalemate. Okay, but what if he promoted? Then we simply just take it, defended by the king. He cannot defend the pawn. I mean, he can move his king. We take here, and this is still a draw. Unless, the bishop was, forked or something. Let's see another position here. Okay. So we play rook to g4. You might say, well, he doesn't have to take. He doesn't have to give a check. Can he do something else? For example, king to f3, attacking the rook with the king, and then giving us actually some space to move. Then what can we do in this position? We can play, for example, if we play rook to h4 here, there is this check, but then we can move to g1, and it doesn't seem clear what he can do. He needs to save the bishop, because if he didn't, then we can take here. Check, and we just take, and this is completely winning for white. So whenever he attacks, whenever he moves away from this, giving us some square to move away, we can just go back, attack the pawn. Because once we take one of the pawns, it is simple for us to go and sacrifice the rook for the second pawn and completely draw this position. Hopefully you like this position. Thank you so much for watching.